Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Wow Report. I'm Fenton Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder, reunited with Tom Campbell, our Chief Creative Officer.
Good to be back.
It's good to see you. And James St. James, editor of the Wow Report.
Oh, hi, James.
Oh, hello, darling.
We are doing what we normally do, counting down the top 10 things of the week that made us go, wow! It's our last show of the summer, officially, according to Blake. So let's start the countdown. Number 10, Tom.
Sheryl Lee Ralph's acceptance speech at this year's Emmy Awards. I happened to be in the room. It was an amazing thing. To watch it on tape is as good as being in the room. I will just set up by saying, you know, why do we still have award shows? Because we crave that maybe once or twice in a lifetime, a speech as compelling as Sheryl Lee Ralph's happens.
Wow.
Did you guys see it?
I did, yes.
She sang a song, right?
Yes. It's a song.
She got up and did a little tap dance and sang and then shuffled off.
First of all, what you couldn't sense is, you know, they list the nominees, and in the room you can tell who's going to win just by the cheering. And not surprisingly, but Sheryl Lee Ralph got a huge amount of applause, and we love her for some reasons we'll get into. But when she won, she got up there, you know, and by the way, in the room again, you're like, listen, you have 45 seconds, and then we're going to play this music, and then we're going to play that music, and we're going to talk about that later, I think. But you know, you're very. As an audience member, I'm watching the clock. I'm like, is everyone gonna like? She's taking too much time to get to the table. She gets up there. She looks as beautiful as she's ever looked. She's
with the diamond hairdo.
Yes, she's in her 60s. She looks amazing. She has such presence, always has. And she stops and she sings. It's a song by Diana Reeves called "Endangered Species," and I won't sing it, but I am an endangered species. But I sing no victim song. I am a woman, I am an artist, and I know, and she held no till they got applause, where my voice belongs. And just that alone, it makes me, I don't know, I have a lot of feelings around Sheryl Lee Ralph, good ones. And then she just thanked, and she, you know, in almost like a sermon, she just thanked everyone. She had humor, she thanked everyone. You know, I used to have to watch, and I still will, Susan Lucci's daytime Emmy acceptance speech to be reconnected with my soul. Now I have a 3-minute version of Sheryl Lee Ralph.
Did they play the play-out music? Did they cut her off?
I think the people in the booth are smart enough to know this is a moment for all time, and they let her be.
You know, I was going to do one of the topics was going to be about music playing people off and how they had the sense to let Sheryl have her moment.
Yeah.
And they tried to do that to Jennifer Coolidge, and they tried to play her off. And Jennifer just started dancing and stole the moment for herself and kept going. I also think it's great that they have the little chyrons playing at the bottom of the screen now, that you can submit all your thanks in advance so that it allows you to be creative in your thing. I don't know if I like the idea of playing people off. I think it's rude, but the opposite is that you get long-winded bloviators up there who just go on and on and on.
The director
I don't know what the answer is.
I think the director who won the Emmy for Ted Lasso said it right. She goes, "No one wants to hear someone not famous thank all their family." She said that about herself.
Yeah, it's true. And unless you are a good speaker and you can do it, then sometimes it just, I don't know. But anyway,
maybe the way to do it is to have the audience vote for when it gets cut off, like
that. That's why World of Wonder needs to produce the next Emmys. I just want to say 2 things about Sheryl Lee Ralph for those who don't. She was the original Dina Jones in Dreamgirls. She was the Beyonce part on Broadway, which was my first musical I ever saw in 1982. Changed my life. She has so much presence. And for 32 years, she has hosted a benefit called Divas Simply Singing. an AIDS benefit she has been doing for 32 years. And I was just doing some research on it. And now she has ABC as a sponsor. I think it might even actually be on some ABC stations because of course, she's a huge star now in Abbott Elementary. So,
and I want to say that I caught the first episode I came on this show and I said Sheryl Lee Ralph is going to get an Emmy. I called it. So many of these I have to just go back and in time and say I told you so because I called almost every single one.
It's fantastic. So I bow at Sheryl Lee Ralph and do yourself the favor, run, don't walk to the Wow Report to see Sheryl Lee Ralph's acceptance, if you haven't seen already, from the Emmy Awards this year.
Fantastic. All right. Number 9, James.
I finally went to go see the Alexander McQueen exhibit at LACMA, which is the first exhibit of his clothes on the West Coast ever. And it is both underwhelming and really spectacular at the same time for different reasons. Sadly, the collection was sort of lackluster. It was all from one woman, a woman named Regina Drucker, who is a philanthropic Pasadena woman, and she has donated her entire closet to LACMA, and she has Fortuny gowns, and she has Charles James and Balenciagas and stuff, but she also has the largest collection of Alexander McQueen's outside of the McQueen studio archives. But all of her outfits are sort of the pedestrian day dresses and things like that. She doesn't have the showstoppers that the Met had, that the Met exhibit had.
Yep.
So it's a lot of really beautifully made garments that are sort of fabulous, but they aren't, the giant, fat jaw-dropping ones. What was jaw-dropping, though, was that Night Fever guest Michael Schmidt, who is on this week's episode of Night Fever, did all the headpieces for it. Every single mannequin had Michael Schmidt did the headpieces, and they are woven twigs in elk's antlers. He did he knit these cable knit wings coming off the head. He did like mosaic tiles going up into giant like beehives, and I mean just unbelievable stuff. And if you go for Michael Schmidt's headpieces, they are absolutely stunning. They will blow your mind. I think McQueen himself would be agog over these. So listen to our Night Fever podcast this week on Spotify or Apple, and go to LACMA if you happen to be in town to see Michael Schmidt's handiwork.
James, when did you become the Disney Corporation? When everything is so seamlessly as synergistic? How did that happen?
Dovetails, yes.
What, James? Why is it called Mind Mythos Muse? That's such a pretentious name for an exhibition.
Well, I mean, all exhibitions are, we remember from doing the gallery, we would come up with the most pretentious. I think we had Owlism in America when we had a bunch of watercolors, pictures of some owls. But I think the muse is, that he, had some very specific muses in mind, Isabella Blow, everything. What was Mythos? So much of it is like the things that he is inspired by are these giant myths.
Because Mythos is like, just say myth, but no, Mythos is like takes it to another level, right? Just suddenly in the presence of Mythos.
Yes. Well, it is all, it's all a bit pretentious. Fashion is pretentious. Museums are pretentious. Make it all pretentious.
Speaking of, number 8, I want to talk about the Queen. I'm talking about Our Lady of Gaga. I'm sorry. I wanted James to say, for fuck's sake. Anyway, yes. Our Lady of Gaga.
Queen Joanne. Queen Stephanie.
Thank you, Tom. I love you so much. Thank you. Yes, she played at Dodger Stadium. Shock to me was I've never been to Dodger Stadium. This is my first time at Dodger. For a Lady Gaga concert, of course. And it was pretty good, right? I mean,
pretty good. It's supposed to be the best, most amazing concert that's ever been put on stage, outdoing Beyonce.
It was a bit Mythos, Mind Mythos Muse. It started off with a bang. She did Bad Romance, Poker Face, Just Dance, boom, boom, boom.
That's incredible.
Although she was literally interred in a pharaonic-like coffin outfit that had to be sort of disassembled to reveal her trapped on the inside. There's all that sort of German expressionist stuff, you know, big, bold graphics, brutal things. And it's okay, but it doesn't like... I kept on thinking, unkindly perhaps, she's not Madonna. Because I think Madonna's shows always were these visual, and I say were, always these visual extravaganzas. And even those little bits of film that Madonna would play, they would be edited and they'd be jerky. And I love Gaga's aesthetic. It's just not as slick as Madonna.
She's still clunky after all this time.
It was in a lovely way. But here's the thing. Here's the important piece of this. When she sat down at the piano, which for some reason best known to anyone else was kind of done up as a bird's nest with tubes and twigs, whatever. When she sat down at piano and did Born This Way, Shallow, Edge of Glory, so good.
Edge of Glory on a piano? That's interesting.
Yes, as a slow ballad.
Wow.
It was really powerful. And she was so good at going from that, speaking to the audience while tiddling along the piano. Those three songs, it was worth going just for those three. And
I heard the same thing from my friend Ethan who went. He loved the whole concert, but he thought that didn't she come forward or something on the piano? She changed positions, and he felt like he just got such a huge dose of Gaga.
But I have seen Gaga with you, Fenton. I've gone to a Gaga concert with you. How does it compare? Has she? Remember, I thought we were so blown away during was it Born This Way concert or?
Yeah, I think partly when you're in a giant stadium of 60,000 people, if you're not. There are only a few seats in that stadium that are ideal. And we were sort of down low, so you can actually always see the dancers, you know, and so you were watching the screen a lot. I mean, it was a spectacle, no question. But I found myself musing about, you know, with the Queen herself being dead and all the pageantry that's going on about that and all the sort of, backlash, I suppose, about the Queen. It just struck me that pop concerts are these exercises in deification. They're sort of like Hitler rallies, you know, that Leni Riefenstahl.
But does the whole idea of
they really? I know it's
out of context. This give me some really ugly quotes from this podcast.
Well, you know, look. Here's the point. I know that the whole idea of pop and deification is it's meta and it's not to be taken seriously. But there is this sort of underlying fascist thing that's being expressed through these military spectacles where it's about scale and precision and ultimately all about one person, that you're just focused on one person. I'm not critiquing Gaga as a monster royalist or anything. Yeah. I'm just saying it's human nature, I think.
No, but don't you find that with the death of the Queen and all the pomp and circumstance surrounding that and the majesty and blah, 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 that there's a backlash to it and the whole idea of that type of fascist, pageantry feels antiquated, and that's sort of maybe what Gaga hasn't quite realized yet is that you do need to probably scale down in 2023.
I think ritual is so deeply embedded in our DNA, and I think we crave it. I think we can rebel against it and say what we want. I think ultimately we crave it.
Exactly. I think we rebel against it, we tear it down, but then it pops back up in a new iteration. That's kind of what I'm saying.
But the wrong people are getting the majesty and the pomp. When we had Trump and his majesty and pomp, and then the Queen, who, for all intents and purposes, was a terrible person if you go on Twitter.
Well, I would recommend not going on Twitter because I don't think she was a terrible person. She was born into a set of circumstances, and I think acquitted herself under those circumstances.
We're going to talk about her later.
I know, but you can't get a Brit to get an honest answer out of this one.
I'm giving you an honest answer, James. Oh my gosh!
I mean, I love her for a number of reasons. I love her little outfits and everything, but the whole colonial thing, if you bubble,
it's hard to know if we're talking about Lady Gaga or the Queen right now. I think we're talking about the Queen.
I mean, we're talking about
Lady Gaga. So
we're talking about the same thing all the time. Queens. This topic never varies. It's Queens talking about Queens on Queens.
Queen Gaga.
All right. Well, let's take a break. Just before we go to break, I'll tell you RuPaul's Drag Race UK Series 4 coming next week, September 22nd on Wow Presents Plus Worldwide. That's Randy's birthday, September 22nd. Boy George, Ollie Alexander, Mel B, FKA Twigs, they're all guests.
I love Ali Alexander. Oh, I love all of them, actually.
Spoiler alert, I was there, and it's a super impressive season. It's a really, it's tough.
It is. Nice. It is. We have paused in the UK all promotion of the season until after the funeral on the 19th. That is a requirement. But it's 3 days later, you'll be able to watch it in all its glory.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, God save the Queen, what have you. All right, we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with James St. James, Tom Campbell, and Blake Jacobs. All right, well, let's keep carrying on counting down top 10 things that made us go, wow. We've reached number 7.
I was in the UK. I was flying back. I, for once, didn't sleep the whole flight. I watched Apple TV, 2 shows on Apple TV that I've never gone to Apple TV. And if you guys have talked about these already, forgive me. Severance, amazing show. I'll tell you the first. And I watched Ted Lasso finally. And my pants were charmed off of me. I'm sitting here in my boxers as we speak. Severance, which is directed by Ben Stiller, stars Adam Scott.
Oh, I love him.
Christopher Walken's in it, John Turturro, Patricia Arquette, and an actress I hadn't seen before named Brie Larson.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the premise, and I'm not going to give spoilers or anything, but no one, because I know these things are on, but no one stops. They assume you know or don't know. Severance is genius. It's about it's living parallel lives in the same body, and the idea is there's this corporation that's sort of biotech, all those evil things, and in order to work like in the 5th basement level, which is like high security, you agree to have a chip put in your brain. That means whenever you cross a certain threshold in the building, when you're at work, you don't remember anything about your outside life. And then at the end of the day, when you go back, you enter back into your life.
Wow.
It's really good. I'm only like 3 episodes in. So much rich, who knows from downstairs, who knows from upstairs. James, we can work together downstairs and see each other in the real world and have no idea who we are.
Well, that sounds lovely.
And I know, and it's sort of how I live. The only thing I'm going to say that is self-referencing is Adam Scott was in the very first action-adventure script show I ever helped create and produce. Fenton may remember. You may remember.
Dead at 21.
Dead at 21 at MTV. And it was all about a kid who had a chip put into his brain. Jack Noseworthy played the lead. And he had 1 year to live. He was 20 years old, and it starts going bad. And he has 1 year to find out who made him, how to stop him, or else he'll be dead at 21. It was an annual experiment, and Adam Scott played the crazy one and he had a chip in his brain. Okay, Severance, you owe me money. Second, Ted Lasso. Now, it reminds me of a modern day Frank Capra movie, or what were those like, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's about American enthusiasm. Ted Lasso is like a college football coach who gets hired by the ex-wife of a soccer, football in England soccer team. She hires him, unbeknownst to him, to basically tank her team. She wants to get back at her husband by destroying the soccer team. So she brings this fish out of water, Ted Lasso, who is this upbeat, inflappable, against all odds. The whole stadium is like, wanker, wanker, wanker. They hate him. But the ensemble cast, including Hannah Waddingham, who won last year for supporting actress, Juno Temple, who plays kind of like Posh Spice to Beckham, Phil Dunster is amazing. Nick Muhammad plays Nathan, this little like water boy who ends up being sort of like a genius. And Brendan Hunt plays sort of Beckham, and you see him in his underwear, James. If that will make you sample.
But here's the thing about Ted Lasso that I can't quite understand, and maybe you can explain it to me.
Have you watched it?
No,
okay.
And I don't want to watch it because nothing about what you just said interests me in the slightest. And yet everybody says that it's the best show ever on television.
And I tapped into it's sort of the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. It's about the character that is inflappable. And in this world where everything is corrupt and wrong and people want to undercut you, here is this sort of like we weebles wobble, but we won't fall down character who is kind of, he's from Oklahoma or Kansas or something. He's kind of red state in his origins, but he's blue state in his intellect and his heart. It's stunning. I avoided it all this time, and I have to tell you, they're both great. Okay, last story is, so Jason Sudeikis won for Best Actor, and I was at the Emmys, Ted Lasso. And, you know, once you go out and do the press tour, you come back in. So he's walking by our table. I'm newly in love with Ted Lasso. And I say, hey, Ted Lasso. He looks at me. We're 7 feet apart. I'm like, oh, my God. I love you, Will Arnett. I called Jason Sudeikis Will Arnett in front of him. So, Jason, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Will, if you're listening, Will, by the way, presented. So he was in my mind. Will, if you're listening, you're welcome.
That's worse than me calling Mel B Mel C.
I couldn't take it back. We all kind of pretended that he didn't hear, but he heard.
Oh.
So at the height of your career, Jason Sudeikis, you can still run into a douchebag like me who misidentifies you. So that's my. But I cannot. I guess I've been paying for Apple TV all this time and I didn't know it, or maybe it's with my AT&T. I don't know, but I have it. Severance. Ted Lasso, 2 different shows, so great. I think I'm dipping deep into the Apple TV pool. It feels really quality to me.
I don't even know if I have it. I don't think I have Apple TV.
I think if you have a Mac, you have Apple TV. Like when you buy a new computer too, or a new iPhone, I think you get it for like a few months.
James, one word: Severance.
Okay. Severance. I'll do it.
Let's move
I don't know
on.
that I'll do Ted Lasso, but I'll do Severance.
Okay. Let's move on to number 6.
Have you seen the Babylon trailer that dropped this week? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Babylon is the new Damien Chazelle movie, the director of La La Land. This is a set in the late 1920s, early 1930s Hollywood. It is about pre-code Hollywood decadence. It is
that sounds delicious.
Fictional characters. It is about the transition from silent to talkies. It stars, hang on to your hats, Brad Pitt in the role of his career that he was born to play, this goofy silent movie star. He's so handsome. Margot Robbie, Jean Smart, Olivia Wilde, Tobey Maguire, Chloe Fineman, Samara Weaving, Eric Roberts, Max Minghella, Spike Jonze, and someone named Diego Calvin, something like that, who steals every scene that he's in. Apparently, the opening scene is 30 minutes long of a montage of Hollywood decadence that makes Fellini look like that out Fellini's Fellini. It is like Baz Luhrmann on steroids. It is. When have you ever had a 30-minute opening scene that is just showing you Hollywood in the late 1920s? The sex, the jazz, the drugs, just nuttiness. Brad Pitt, like I said, looks amazing. Margot looks a little weird. She looks modern. I don't quite get it, but Margot has never had a bad movie as far as I'm concerned.
Me too.
She's fantastic. It opens December 25th. I predict it is going to be an Oscar contender. I think Brad might finally get his Best Actor Oscar as well. There were several laugh out loud moments in the trailer.
Did you say December 25th?
December 25th.
We have to wait till Christmas?
Yes.
What's the story about?
It is. It's just. I guess it is the story of Hollywood. So it's shown through the eyes of real characters and fake characters or made up characters from the movie, just about the way things were in Hollywood, I guess.
What's Brad Pitt do? Like, what's his part?
He's a very sort of a piss elegant silent movie star who is sort of making the transition to talkies, and he has this wonderful little pencil mustache, and he's always in little white tuxedos, and his hair is and he looks so good. But there's a scene where he chokes on something, he falls out the window, and he's just doing like slapstick comedy the entire time. And he is so good. You forget how good Brad Pitt can be.
He's funny because he's so
Yes.
good looking. I think he's been cast in sort of boring roles sometimes, but in Bullet Train, he's really funny.
In Bullet Train, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you go back to things like 12 Monkeys in California and True Romance. He was hysterical in True Romance. When he chomps into a role, he really takes it and runs with it. So I am very excited about this. I hope we're going to put it on the WoW Report, and I hope everybody gets a chance to look at this trailer, because it out Baz Luhrmann's Baz Luhrmann is what it does.
Can't wait. Number 5, Transformer, Lou Reed's album. Lou Reed's solo album, Transformer, in November will be 50 years old. And the reason I sort of rediscovered it was Simon Doonan has written an entire book about the album called Transformer, and that's coming out on the release date in November. But a lot went on in 1972, and the interesting thing about Transformer is it was produced by Bowie and Mick Ronson, and Bowie and Mick Ronson at the time were doing this, like Bowie would fillet Mick Ronson's guitar. It was that glam rock era of Spiders from Mars, Ziggy Stardust, very sort of, well, Simon calls it glamdrogyny. And it was, as a 12-year-old kid, I remember how radical and freakishly radical it was. And in fact, a sort of almost an opening of the doors of perception, of like, oh my God, there's a world out there that's like this. And it's such a great album, right? You've got Walk on the Wild Side, Telephone Conversation, Waiting for My Man,
Satellite of Love, and Perfect Day. Perfect Day is one of the most perfect songs of all time.
Perfect Day, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
That's one of those songs that will make me cry every single. I'll hear the opening chords and just weep.
Which is not what you would expect from someone from the Velvet.
I was just going to say, when you have Waiting for Your Man and all the Velvet Underground stuff, to see him go to this transition is fascinating to watch that transitional period of him.
And I think Simon writes this really profoundly amusing, interesting, compelling book, but also points out a couple of things. One is that the album was not well received at the time and has only gone on over the years to become a legendary milestone album. Number one.
Well, I would imagine that the Velvet Underground I remember the Banana album went through the same thing, didn't it? It came out to bad reviews and nobody bought it, and it's only become more.
Right.
So that's sort of a thing in his life.
Number 2, Lou Reed didn't really embrace the glam rock thing. He kind of hated it and kind of distanced himself from the album because, number 3, glam rock, and I had never noticed this, really wasn't that gay. It was actually mainly straight acts. And the
New York Dolls.
The 5 of the straightest people alive, Danny Field said. And then, and the fact that it sort of got subsequently adopted, it's almost rewritten history. And glam rock was kind of straight and jocks. And the single exception to that, of course, was Jobriath, who said he was gay and was very open about it. Massive, failure, you know. So I think it's a really fascinating case study. And the book is it's only 158 pages. And Simon is such a brilliant writer. I'm going to make him come on the show in November if we can get him when it's the actual 50 years. But such an important album. And also, what an insane amount of creativity. Hunky Dory, Bowie's Hunky Dory came out at the end of 71, so essentially 72. Then in June, Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars, that whole album. And then in November, Transformer. I mean, just a sort of these amazing, it's sort of like Warhol too, I guess. Everything happened in 1962 for Warhol, just fascinating. Tom?
That zeitgeist bubble kind of thing that happens.
Yes. Oh, here's a question, though. Do you know the word naff, how the origination of the word naff?
I have a funny story about naff after this, but yes.
Well, because the whole idea is that you had glam rock, and then kind of counter to that was all this sort of everything that was naff. The queer community naff is a Polari word.
I was going to say, yeah.
that stands for not available for fucking. And that's how
I always associate it with sort of like housewifey, like sort of housewifey style type thing. When I if in 1985, 86, when Boy George and Marilyn had taken over the New York club scene, and they were very much mean girls to me. And every time they'd see me, they'd say, "She's a bit naff, isn't she?" about me. And I had no idea what naff was. And I would walk around and say, "Boy George just said I was naff." And I thought it was such a compliment, but I was actually, they were being very nasty to me.
Full disclosure, right now I'm naff. I'm not available for fucking, but I'm getting my monkeypox shot, I think, later today. So I'm on my way.
Good for you, Tom. I mean, we can all hope, right?
Exactly. Fingers crossed.
Hope springs eternal with Tom Campbell and the monkeypox.
Well, I heard that if there's a line, it's always just hot, lovely people in line. You know.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to be in the middle group by now.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after the break. Hey, welcome back to the Wow Report. I would just say, two-time winner of RuPaul's Drag Race, Jinx Monsoon, has a new show coming to Wow Presents Plus. It's kind of Portlandia meets Kids in the Hall, strange and brilliant comedy sketch series called Sketchy Queens.
There's nothing like it on Wow Presents Plus. It's a breath of fresh air. It's genius.
It's absolutely genius. Features celebrity guests Trixie Mattel, Brittany Broski, and Brandon Rogers as well. So that's September 15th, Wow Presents Plus, Sketchy Queens.
And another little self-promotion. If I'm not on the edit room floor, you might see me in it.
Oh, good. I'm sure you won't be.
I'm not gonna put money on that one. I was gonna say
we'll see. I don't know, because of my many scandals going on, I might be cut out.
Oh. We'll cut this bit out of the show, Blake. It's okay. You'll be all right. Number 4.
I am suggesting we have headgear for each of our stories moving forward. I want to talk just a little tiny bit, James, about the passing of Queen Elizabeth. And here's what I take away. I was in London shooting a show when it happened. We'd been told for years, shooting Drag Race and Queen of the Universe, that when the Queen passes away, there'd be a state-ordered 8-day mourning. And so the last day we were shooting, we were putting on, we were letting the audience in to the Queen of the Universe, and it's like the Queen is dead. Like everyone, Michelle Visage knew. She knew someone in the palace. She knew ahead of everyone else. And we were like, do we go on? I was just so afraid the whole city was going to shut down. Indeed, it did not all shut down. It's hard. I can't even begin to understand what the Queen meant for 70 years to a country. She's like water there, right? She's just always there. And I was going to do Buckingham Palace, and then I felt like an outsider. When I got home that night, I watched lots of tributes, which had been pre-produced, and newsreel footage that had been compiled of just her entire reign. Here's my only takeaway, because there's too much to break down, pro, con, all that kind of stuff, is all these years later, Charles is king, Camilla is essentially queen, and think of all the drama that was created by keeping those two apart. And Princess Diana and her tragic passing. The only, like, a 70-year lifespan gives you perspective of, like, the little stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just get along, people. That's what I take away from the Queen's passing. What'd you guys think?
Well, James.
I liked her little outfits. I always liked her little matching coats and jackets and dresses and the little sensible shoes and sensible handbags and the hat that matches. I loved the Queen for many, many reasons. I like Harry and Meghan being there and walking with William and Kate. I thought that was very touching.
Yes.
I loved when Charles had the meltdown over the pen.
I love that. That is I
that got me my juices flowing, boy. That was like a Game of Thrones moment where you see the future.
It's not the first moment either, because when he signed up to be king, remember there was a sort of pen set on the desk, and he was.
Well, that's the one I'm talking about. That's the one I'm talking about.
James,
you then the other one where I saw where it was melt. Yes, and
the best one is the leaking pen.
Yes, the leaking pen.
That is. Well, there's two.
But that gives me hope that we might have a crazy king in the future. that he's a nutty sort of control freak.
Can I just play what I know you got about there, but just one minute. It's like he's signing the thing, and he said, "Oh, what day is it?" And the aide says, "Oh, it's the 13th, your sir." And then, oh, bugger, I wrote the wrong day. And as he's writing it, Camilla, who's standing there, says, "You wrote the 12th earlier." And so there's this sort of squabble about what day it is. And then he stands up, "Oh, this bloody thing, the pen's leaking." It is a moment for the ages. And I will say, nothing that would have ever happened with Queen Elizabeth.
No, that's just it. That's just, and it is. You can see on The Crown, on a future episode of The Crown, it's going to be a whole episode.
Leaky pen.
And then the thing that was on the desk, and get rid of it. And he freaks out. And there's going to be all sorts of behind the scenes, blah blah blah. But I do think that the American press greatly overestimated our interest in this when we've got so much going on with the Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump and the subpoenas and this and that, where you have literally 23 and a half hours a day following the Queen toddling her way down from Scotland.
I watched that first night. I saw the footage. I had my emotional catharsis, and I'm no longer interested, not in a mean way, but like, no. It's like watching paint dry, and also hearing people, she did love her corgis. Everyone's speculating. It's like, I'm waiting for the big funeral procession.
Yes, it once every 70 years this happens in the UK, and God bless them, go bananas, you guys, you deserve it. It's all on you. But in America, I don't think we need 10 channels of news covering 23 and a half hours a day about it. I just don't. And it really irritated the fuck out of me by about.
I have one word for you, James. Severance on Apple TV.
or gummies, as we were talking about before the show.
Well, I'll just wrap this up by saying the funeral is on Monday the 19th. So maybe we'll next week have a little.
That I will watch.
Bound to be big. Number 3, James St. James. We haven't heard from you all this episode.
I wanted to say that there are a couple other Rest in Powers that happened this week that I think we need to acknowledge because they aren't getting sort of the attention that they would normally. The first was yesterday, we learned the passing of photographer Roxanne Lowitt, who is someone who has been on the New York scene forever and ever and ever and ever. She is, by all accounts, a wonderful, wonderful woman. She does mostly behind the scenes fashion at fashion shows, fashion parties, things like that. But she's also sort of a Patrick McMullen-esque character who is just always downtown, always taking pictures of people, always being very promoting people, promoting the queens, promoting the kids, promoting the club kids and things. She promotes, she helped mentor a lot of photographers. God bless her. May she rest in power. She fabulous, fabulous pictures. Just hashtag Roxanne Lowitt on Instagram. You'll be blown away. Ken Starr died too. He was the special counsel who uncovered the Bill Clinton affair with Monica Lewinsky. And the only reason I'm bringing him up is because Monica Lewinsky showed such grace and class yesterday when she tweeted. She said, as many of you can understand, my thoughts about Ken Starr are complicated, but more important is that I imagine it's a painful loss for those who love him, which is, I mean,
wasn't he also involved in covering up sexual assault?
Oh, yes.
With young girls.
Yeah, I mean, he's a terrible guy, and he was on Trump's. He was Trump's lawyer during the first impeachment. So I mean, like, horrible. Yeah. But just listening to Monica, who has every reason to bitch and moan about him.
Mm-hmm. She was very good. She took the high road.
Also, Jean-Paul Godard died this week. Which did you even know that he was still alive?
No.
Shocking. he didn't have much success in his later life after Breathless and Alphaville. Were you a fan? Do you know those movies inside
I've
and
heard
out?
of them. I don't think I've ever seen them, but I look forward to seeing them someday soon. Since I've seen
Alphaville is a really spectacular French new wave science fiction movie that Kelly Osbourne remade as a music video. If you just want to get the 2-minute version, watch Kelly Osbourne. Also, Woman is a Woman is a good one, and also Contempt with Catherine Deneuve.
And didn't William Klein die too?
I was just going to say, yeah, William Klein too, the photographer who did so many spectacular cityscape pictures in the 50s, 60s, 70s of New York.
And newsman Bernard Shaw also passed away.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Bernard Shaw.
What a incredible, the morning of the Queen. But he lived a long, rich life. What a contribution! What representation for Black reporters.
The first reporter on CNN, wasn't he?
He may have been. You're right.
Yeah,
anchor, perhaps.
My God, it's a bumper week. The Grim Reaper's been really
busy.
All right, number 2. I want to talk about the Queen, Anna Wintour. About 10 years, actually, 10 years ago, we made a film called In Vogue, The Editor's Eye, and that's very much when I fell in love with Vogue and Anna Wintour. Just to sort of, to me, she's a sort of Warhol figure in my estimation. And of course, now Vogue is now 2022, 130 years old. And they celebrated by doing this thing called Vogue World. And I was like, well, you see a little thing advertising it, and it was a live streaming thing. And I actually just put it in the calendar and watched Vogue World. It was a fashion show. It was in the meatpacking district. They basically just took a street and they had all these people walk down the street in different fashions. Supposedly this season's fashions. Honestly, I couldn't tell you, but they had, and it was such an interesting mix of people. There was Baryshnikov, I think.
I saw that. I saw a clip of him.
Yeah.
Right? Brooklyn Peltz Beckham and his wife. Kanye West was so late that it looked like he was walking down the street, but he was just walking to his seat. Serena Williams opened the show.
And in the silver cape thing, yes.
And it was so interesting. It was interesting because it was sort of like a fashion show, but it wasn't really. And also because it was different looks from different collections, it didn't feel very cohesive. It was extraordinarily diverse. It was sort of more like a sort of parade and of 500 people. And of course, I didn't know who any of them were, really. I mean, it was a mixture of models and celebrities. It was just really extraordinary. And they played, one of the tracks was Din Dada. Din Dada, Din Do.
Was it the Kevin Aviance version?
Sort of, well, that's sort of where I'm going with this. And then they played Vogue, Madonna's Vogue, which I think actually is, I think that track, even though it had nothing to do with Vogue magazine, I somehow feel it was the shift that made Vogue to sort of Vogue into the modern era. Even though it was nothing to do with Vogue, I felt somehow it elevated the whole idea of Vogue and fashion. I suppose
I like this idea so much more than what the Met Ball has become.
Yes.
I'm not saying the Met Ball should go away. That's not my decide. But Benton, leave the broadcast early. Email your friend Anna and say, I would like to produce next year's Fashion Boulevard. Because it sounds more exciting. Like it's a parade. It's all these things.
It was so diverse, not just diverse in a woke sense, diverse in every sense. And it was also in some sense very understated. It wasn't, as you say, Tom, exclusive or elitist in its feeling. And it was just interesting. And the fact that, of course, Anna was there and there were plenty of shots of her. And of course, sat next to her, I couldn't make out who it was because it's quite dark and it wasn't perfectly lit, which I also like because it was street.
Yes.
And I think that that's what's been so interesting about fashion since Vogue, the single, is that it's really all been about street. And this was genuinely street. Okay, so it was in the meatpacking district, which isn't really street. It's sort of elite street.
It's Cobblestone Street, though.
Cobblestone Street. But then sitting right next to it was Lil Nas X, who just gets up from his seat and did the closing song. And
This is a media event that needs to be produced by World
good.
of Wonder, Fenton.
Well, it was
And
good.
you've been dying to get your hands on Lil Nas X for
I know.
a year and a half now. So
my God. And
give him the wow treatment.
it was kind of nice, James. And I know you, James, are very over fashion, but I also felt in a way, it felt slightly like this was post fashion. Because I feel that it was a bit, as at the Lady Gaga concert, looking at people in the audience, and honestly, most of them looked terrible. They were wearing all their own outfits and everything, and it just wasn't fashion. It wasn't good. People look like they've just been
coming
digging
for the little monsters.
Well, they all look like they're at Halloween or something.
No, I'm not exactly, Tom. It looked, and the similarity between that and Vogue World, they were kind of similar. And what Lady Gaga said at one point in the concert was, it looks like a lot of people are here who know who they are. And that was the thing. Even though there wasn't a cohesive look, and even though I wouldn't say it was chic, what was really strong and undeniable, that people knew who they were and were being who they wanted to be. And I felt that was an amazing, inspiring thing.
Gay Pride meets Fashion Week meets the Thanksgiving Parade. Talk to me after this, Fenton. We're going to
It all connects, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's take one more break, and then we'll reveal the number one thing that made us go, wow. Just quickly, Drag Race Philippines, airing now, new episodes on Wednesdays on Wow Presents Plus, with Untucked too, by the way. All right, we'll be right back after the break. All right, we're back. It's Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake, who is going to reveal this week's number one thing that made us go, wow. Blake?
What is the New York Times bestseller this week?
I want to guess. Is the author Tabitha Brown?
I don't know.
Tabitha Brown is incredible. She's a New York Times bestselling author. We work with her. She has a show called It's Complicated on the Food Network, and she's an amazing human being and spiritual guide and soul. She's for another day. I love Tabitha. Anyway.
I have a guess. Is it A.A. Milne, Winnie the Pooh?
No.
James?
Well, it's you just read this on the plane going to Arkansas. I mean, you just had the audio version. It's Jennette McCurdy. I hate my mother.
Yeah.
Or I'm glad my mother's dead.
I'm glad my mother died. Yeah. I just read this. Jennette McCurdy was on iCarly. She played the kicky sidekick, and you wrote this book. She's been touring it all over. We were just talking about book tours before the show. She was on The View, and her mother was mentally, physically, even sexually abusive to her growing up. But she's come out on the other side of it. She's quit acting. She's now a writer in Hollywood, and she has the #1 Times bestseller list, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
Did she play Sam in Sam and Cat too?
Yes.
Oh, I loved her.
Opposite Ariana Grande, yep.
Yeah, and her mother was pretty batshit crazy.
She's a monster.
The title of the book is shocking. The first time I heard it, I was like, wow. And I didn't realize that it would be as beloved as it is. And it's amazing for her that she's able to sort of get some therapy by writing it.
And she went to therapy, and that's where she realized that her mother was abusive. She always held her mother, up on a pedestal.
Of course.
And she went to therapy for anorexia that her mother taught her how to do to, stay young for these kid roles. And the therapist was like, this sounds like abuse. And she left the therapist like, how dare you? But then eventually went back to another therapist and worked through it. She realized it, and it's just really good.
Wow. Oh, wow. That sounds great. Have you read it, James?
No, I haven't, but I'm interested in it now, definitely.
And does she read the book?
She does. That's another thing I love on audiobooks when the author reads the book, because I feel like they actually know what, they read it in the voice that they.
Right. Can't blame it on the edit. You wrote it.
Yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to tell you guys, I saw the most fun horror film I've seen in forever. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen next.
Is it the Winnie the Pooh horror film?
No, it's not. But I have heard
You're
of
all
that.
about Winnie the Pooh this week, aren't you? You're on a little poo kick.
I'm on a poo rage. Yeah.
It just Winnie the Pooh just came back into like the public domain, right?
Yes.
That's why they made that horror film. But anyway, this movie that I saw was sort of two films in one. It starts out straight horror. It cuts to another story introducing the second main character, who is a famous, kind of has been, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. It's kind of like a new horror genre, rental house horror, where people rent Airbnbs. Like it's pouring rain.
Yeah.
A girl pulls up to her recently flipped Airbnb in a really rundown neighborhood of Detroit because she has like a job interview the next day. And then only to discover, to her horror, that someone else had already rented the Airbnb. But she ends up like deciding against all odds to stay there with this guy who is actually Bill Skarsgård, who is an executive producer.
Yeah.
The main horror character is amazing. The theater was packed on a Tuesday night, and everyone was laughing and jumping and spilling popcorn everywhere. Even touches on the Me Too movement. Go see the movie Barbarian.
Barbarian.
Yes.
But now, wait a minute. You
Babylon
just made me
Barbarian.
go see Bodies, 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 and you said that was the best horror movie you've ever seen. So
This
how does
is
it
even
compare?
better than that.
That was
This is
last
better
week.
than that.
That was last
Yeah.
week.
Okay.
I like that Airbnb horror movie as a genre. I think there's something there. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And you're not going to tell us who's in it? Is it Charlene Tilton?
No, it's not Charlene Tilton, but good guess.
Lisa Hartman.
No, it's an actor.
Richard Simmons.
An actor who plays an actor. But I just want you to like not know as much as
Okay.
I didn't know, because I read basically that a girl discovers that she's sharing an Airbnb and decides against all odds to stay with the guy. And that's like all I knew.
Barbarian.
Barbarian.
Okay.
Not to be confused with Medieval, which is also out at the same time. I got them a little confused when I was at the movie theater.
Thanks, Blake. Thank you, James. Thank you, Tom. Good to see us all again. Same time, same place next week. Until then, go out and do something that makes the world go.
Wow. Wow.